Today's lesson is called The Fascinating Histories of Everyday Foods, Day 2. Hi everyone, my name is Jeff.
I'm Roger, and today we're going to continue talking about common everyday foods, types of food that we eat every day as part of our daily diet, like corn, hamburgers, potatoes, and today we're going to talk about curry and baguettes as well. These are all very common kinds of food, especially in Western cooking, but of course here in Taiwan, you have these foods in addition to the staples of rice and noodles. Those are common foods. Last time, of course, we were talking about hamburgers and potatoes. Potatoes came from South America. They eventually found their way to Europe, and now they're very much part of European cooking. And we also talked about hamburgers, that quintessential American food, which is not actually American in origin. It actually comes from Germany, but it was somebody in America who stuck those pieces of meat between bread, and voila, the hamburger was born. And today we're going to talk about some more food, especially curry. Curry is a food or a type of food or a seasoning or whatever that we think of when we talk about Indian food, but of course curry is very much part of local Taiwanese cooking as well. So hey, let's talk about curry in today's program. Let's get to it. Let's read the first part of our lesson right now.
Curry. The word curry, from the Tamil word kari, meaning sauce, is actually an umbrella term for numerous dishes found all over India and Southeast Asia. In fact, the only defining ingredients of curries are ginger, turmeric, and garlic. Amazingly, archaeologists in India recently found traces of all three spices in pots that date back to around 2500 BC, suggesting that curry, in some form, has been eaten for over 4,500 years.
大家好，今天第一个单字我们看到的是 ginger， 这个字当作名词，它有姜的意思。例如 Anne likes to drink tea mixed with ginger, lemon, and honey.Anne 喜欢喝姜、柠檬和蜂蜜所混合的茶饮。
All right, everyone, nothing to see here. Move along. Nothing exotic to see here, right? Well, in a manner of speaking, yes, there is nothing super interesting going on, okay? We're talking about humble and modest foods. But remember, these foods, these everyday foods, these modest, humble everyday foods, I should say, they all seem to have very interesting histories. And yes, last time we talked about potatoes and hamburgers, and today we've got some more humdrum, normal, simple foods, the histories of which are actually quite interesting, intriguing, or fascinating. So let's go ahead and get started on day 2 of our article on these everyday foods that have fascinating histories. Now, the first of these foods is curry. We've got curry, then corn, and then baguettes. But first up, we're talking about curry. Now, first of all, the word curry, from the Tamil word kari, meaning sauce, is actually an umbrella term for numerous dishes found all over India and Southeast Asia.
Indeed. So we're describing this as an umbrella term. Umbrella here just refers to something that's very general. It's not very specific. It's just kind of a general term for various dishes found all over India. As you know, India is a huge country with lots and lots of different languages and different regions and different people. So this is kind of an umbrella term for various dishes found all over India, but also in Southeast Asia, like in Myanmar or Thailand or whatever. They have various dishes that include curry as well. In fact, the only defining ingredients of curries are ginger, turmeric, and garlic. So these are some ingredients of curries that you pretty much have to have in order to call the sauce curry. Ginger, of course, is jiang. Turmeric is jianghuang. And then garlic, of course, is daswan, as you know. So these are very common in local cooking here in Taiwan, and they're common in cooking all over Asia as well.
Ginger. You guys all know what ginger is. Roger just clued you in to how you say this in Chinese, but let's go ahead and explain this in English, even though, yes, you guys probably all know what ginger is. What's ginger? Ginger is a spicy, nice-smelling plant that is often used to flavor food. This spice, ginger, is taken from the root of the ginger plant, though. That being said, I don't believe the ginger plant has a simple root. I believe the root that you cut up to get this spice, ginger, is actually called a rhizome, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, that's enough about ginger. Then we have turmeric, or turmeric, I've heard some people say. When we're talking about this spice, we're talking about a yellow powder taken from the root or the rhizome of a plant that is in the ginger family. So we're not talking about ginger, but we're talking about something that is closely related to ginger. And yes, like ginger, turmeric or turmeric is used to flavor and to color food, especially curry. So where does that nice yellow color from the curry come from? It probably comes from this turmeric or this turmeric. Anyways, moving on, the next sentence says, amazingly, archaeologists in India recently found traces of all three of these spices, ginger, turmeric, and garlic. These archaeologists in India, I should say, recently found traces of all three spices in pots that date back to around 2500 BC, suggesting that curry in some form has been eaten for over 4,500 years, which is staggering. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about this word, archaeologist. Archaeologists are people, professionals, or experts who study human history by digging up things. Yeah, archaeologists study human history by digging up or finding artifacts and things like that. Archaeologists dig these things up, or they explore ruins and remains and stuff like that. So archaeologists are practitioners in the field of archaeology. But what is archaeology? Very simply, archaeology is just the scientific study of human history, usually ancient human history. All right, folks, with that, it's time for us to take a break, but don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
Corn. Corn originated in present-day Mexico around 9,000 years ago, when ancient pioneers began to cultivate a wild grass called teosinte. Teosinte wasn't very tasty in its natural state, but when its seeds were held over an open fire, it did produce a popcorn similar to the snack that is enjoyed worldwide today. Over centuries of careful breeding, teosinte eventually became the delicious crop we know today as corn.
第二部分我们看到的单字是 pioneer， 这个字当作名词，代表开拓者、拓荒者或是先锋、先驱的意思。所以我们可以说 The pioneers settled down in the new place and set up the farm. 开拓者在新发现的地方定居并建立农场。再来我们看到的单字是 worldwide， 这个字当作副词，代表全世界的或是在世界各地的意思。例如 People worldwide watch the baseball game on television. 全世界的人都在看电视上的棒球比赛。
Okay, so we're done talking about curry. So, hey, if we've whetted your appetite, you can head down to your local Indian restaurant after the program. But don't do that yet, because now we're going to talk about corn. Good old corn, okay? Corn originated in present-day Mexico around 9,000 years ago, when ancient pioneers began to cultivate a wild grass called teosinte. Okay, we're not going to try to say that word too often here because it really isn't that common, but because we're talking about the origin of corn, we do at least need to mention this word. So it originated in present-day Mexico, what we know as corn today. This happened around 9,000 years ago. My goodness, even older than China itself. But hey, this goes back to Mexico. Of course, it wasn't Mexico at the time. It was something else. So that's why we're saying present-day Mexico. And that's where corn came from. That's where it originated. And we've got these ancient Pioneers. Pioneer could mean a couple of things. Pioneers could be people who are moving into areas of the world that are not so explored, and they're going to make farms there, build their houses there, or something like that. We talk about the pioneers in the United States moving west. But in this particular case, I think we're talking about people who are trying to figure out ways to raise food, to cook the food. So we've got these ancient pioneers in what was Mexico, or what is Mexico now, and they found this wild grass there, teosinte, and they started to grow it, and I guess eventually it became corn.
There you go. The history of corn starts around 9,000 years ago when ancient pioneers began to cultivate a wild grass. How interesting. Now, Roger talked about this. He talked about the word pioneer. Very simply, a pioneer is a person who pioneers. So there you go. The word pioneer can be used as a noun, as it's being used in this sentence, I should say, but it can also be used as a verb. So very simply, a pioneer, and here we're using the word as a noun, a pioneer is a person who pioneers. But what does it mean to pioneer? What does this verb mean? Well, to pioneer is to explore, okay? If you're a pioneer, or if you pioneer, you're the first to explore a place, or you're the first person to do something. If you're a pioneer, you pioneer. And to pioneer, like I said before, is to do new things that will usually help others in the future, or which will show others the way in the future, the way to do something or the way to go, okay? That's all there is to it. That's what pioneers do. They pioneer. I hope that's not confusing. But yes, this word can be used as both a noun and as a verb. Now, more on this wild grass called teosinte. Teosinte wasn't very tasty in its natural state, but when its seeds were held over an open fire, it did produce a popcorn similar to the snack that is enjoyed worldwide today. So, if you go 9,000 years into the past in Mexico, people were consuming corn, but they weren't eating corn on the cob or anything like that. They were eating popcorn. What an interesting fact. Anyways, popcorn. You guys all know what popcorn is. It's a snack that is enjoyed worldwide today, and was also apparently enjoyed 9,000 years ago in Mexico. Anyways, what does this word worldwide mean? Worldwide means globally. It means globally, or all over the world, or in many places on planet Earth.
Okay, so it's not the same as the popcorn we enjoy today, but it was very similar to popcorn that we enjoy today. Now, over centuries of careful breeding, teosinte eventually became the delicious crop we know today as corn. So they had all sorts of breeding over the centuries, sort of changing this plant gradually over time until it became the corn that we know today as corn. And I don't even know if this teosinte still exists. It probably has been changed in such a long period of time that the original probably doesn't really exist anywhere. Although you might do some research on that. It might still be available out there somewhere, but it doesn't sound very tasty to me. It sounds like the corn we have today is mighty tasty, especially when we go to the movie theater. Okay, so far we've talked about curry today, and we've talked about corn, so we need to go to France now and talk about baguettes. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's learn some more now about baguettes.
Baguettes. A staggering 10 billion loaves of this classic staple are consumed each year in France. The history of this long, thin, and crispy bread, however, is a little hazy. One heavily disputed story claims that the baguette was invented by Napoleon Bonaparte, who charged bakers with baking a bread that could fit easily into the long, deep pockets on his soldiers' uniforms. From their unexpected sites of origin to their surprisingly long histories, it's clear that even seemingly ordinary foods can have extraordinary stories.
第三部分我们看到的单字是 staple， 这个字当作名词，它有经常食用的重要食物或是主食的意思。例如，米饭是东亚的烹饪主食，英文可以这么说 Rice is a staple of East Asian cooking。再来我们看到的单字是 consume， 这个字当作动词，代表吃、喝或是消耗的意思。所以我们可以说 Isabel consumes a lot of vegetables and fruit. Isabel 吃很多蔬菜水果。今天最后一个单字我们看到的是 dispute， 这个字当作动词，它有质疑，对点点点表示异议的意思。所以我们可以说 The manufacturer disputed the results of the product safety report. 该制造商对商品安全报告的结果提出异议。
Now, the final food that we're going to talk about, though, is somewhat exotic. At least it's exotic to me. Coming from America, I'm used to Wonder Bread, simple white bread. So when I think of baguettes, I think, wow, that is slightly exotic. That's a fancy piece of French bread. Yes, people in Paris, urbanites, super sophisticated people in Paris might eat a baguette while sipping on a cup of coffee or something like that. So baguettes, to me, being an American, are somewhat exotic. But if you were in France, you would never think that in a million years. Get this, a staggering 10 billion loaves of this classic staple are consumed each year in France. So for us, for an American, let's say, like me, a baguette might be exotic. Everywhere else, and especially in France, baguettes are nothing special at all.
Indeed, but we're describing a baguette as a staple. And if something's a staple, that means it's something that is used very common in their culture, especially if they eat it every day. Of course, rice is a staple here in Taiwan. Bread is a staple in the United States. Tortillas are staples of Mexican cooking, etc. So, yes, this classic staple is consumed in great quantities every year. 10 billion loaves. My goodness, they must have ovens working overtime there in France to meet the demand of all those loaves of baguettes. Now, the history of this long, thin, and crispy bread, however, is a little hazy. If something's hazy, that means it's kind of clear. Sometimes we could describe the weather outside as being kind of hazy, especially if it's a hot summer day and you can't really see very far. You can't really see the buildings. That could be a result of air pollution, yes, but sometimes it does refer to conditions in the atmosphere, maybe a little bit too much moisture in the air, and a combination of smoke like smog or something, and things get a little hazy there. But indeed, it is very clear that this kind of bread is consumed or eaten every year in France in great quantities, but the history is not so clear.
Yes, the history of the baguette is a little hazy or a little unclear, but that doesn't mean that the history that is in question, or this questionable history that we'll be talking about, won't be fascinating. So, even though the history of baguettes, well, the history is going to be a little bit hazy, the story behind it, even though we don't know what it means or we don't know if it's true or not, it's still going to be interesting. Anyways, one heavily disputed story having to do with the history of baguettes, one heavily disputed story claims that the baguette was invented by Napoleon Bonaparte, who charged bakers with baking a bread that could fit easily into the long, deep pockets on his soldiers' uniforms. So how about that? I had no idea that Napoleon would factor into the history of baguettes at all, but here you go. There is a story that claims that Napoleon Bonaparte is responsible for the baguette. Now, this is a story, but remember, it's also a heavily disputed story. Now, if something is disputed, everyone, it is in dispute. People disagree on this thing. So apparently, not everyone believes that this story is true. Not everyone believes this story to be true. Some people think it to be total nonsense, evidently.
Sounds like a cute story, though. I suppose Bonaparte wanted his soldiers to have food at the ready when they were fighting the Russians and stuff like that. So he charged the bakers. He said, hey, you bakers, I need you to make some bread that my soldiers can carry in their long, deep pockets. Therefore, they'll never be hungry. They'll have lots of energy to fight our enemies. But again, this story is disputed. Sounds cute, but it's probably not true. Now, here's the final part of our lesson for today. It says, from their unexpected sites of origin to their surprisingly long histories, it's clear that even seemingly ordinary foods can have extraordinary stories. And that's how we wrap things up here. We have their unexpected sites of origin. Of course, a lot of times we don't really know where these foods came from, but when we do some research, we find that, hey, the origin of this common everyday food is quite interesting. I'm glad I listened to this lesson today. I really learned something. The information I learned from today's lesson is going to really benefit me in my life. I will be really, really rich in the future, whereas if I hadn't listened to this lesson, I'm going to be very poor.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. All right, folks, with that, it's time for us to end our lesson, but don't go away. The Chinese teacher is waiting in the wings.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。在第一部分有一个句子是 Amazingly, archaeologists in India recently found traces of all 3 spices in pots that date back to around 2500 BC, suggesting that curry in some form has been eaten for over 4500 years. 令人不可思议的是，印度的考古学家最近在西元前2500年左右的壶罐里面发现这3种香料，表示咖喱以某种形式来说已经被食用超过4500年了。好，句子里面的 archaeologist 它表示考古学家，那也有人把它拼作 ARCHEOLOGIST。 好，那至于考古学的英文是 archaeology， ARCHAEOLOGY， 同样的也有人把前面拼作 ARCHEOLOGY。那这边帮同学们补充一下它的字首字根。 Archae 的部分 ARCHAEO 或者是 ARCHEO 这部分它表示古老的或是原始的，那后面碰到母音的时候 O 就不见了。至于后面的 ology 它是名词字尾，用来表达某一个学门某一个专门学科，我们去掉 Y再加上 IST 之后就可以用来表达研究这门学科的人，像 biology 表示生物学， biologist 就是生物学家。好，另外要补充一个重点是片语 date back 它表示追溯起源，那它有2种用法。第一种是在 date back 后面接一段时间，用来表达这段时间之前开始怎么样。例如 The festival dates back 200 years， 这个节庆是从200年前开始的。好，第二种用法呢是在 date back to 后面接某个时期或者是某个年代，意思就相当于 trace back to 或者是 go back to。例如 The custom dates back to medieval times， 这个习俗可以追溯至中世纪时期。好，接着我们读到课文第2部分的开头。Corn originated in present-day Mexico around 9,000 years ago, when ancient pioneers began to cultivate a wild grass called teosinte. 玉米大约在9000年前源自现今的墨西哥，那时呢，早期的拓荒者开始种植一种称为大除草的野草。好，那句子里面的动词 originate 也可以用来表达起源。originate 它是不及物动词，那常见的用法是在后面接 in 或者是 from 再加某事物来表达发源什么，来自于什么。那它的受词就不见得一定要是时间，也可以是地点啊，或者是其他事物。好，以上是今天的重点整理，接着我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Ginger. I make a tea with ginger, lemon, and honey as soon as I start feeling sick. Pioneer. The pioneer of the smartphone was a Japanese company which released the first such phone in 1999. Worldwide. She is known worldwide as an amazing actress and singer. Staple. The cookbook provides easy recipes using everyday staples that people keep in their kitchen. Consume. During the party, we consumed several bags of chips and a whole case of soda. Dispute. The man's statement about the event was disputed during the trial.
Discussion starter starts now!
All right, everyone. It's now time for our discussion starter. Roger, which food's origin were you most surprised to learn about, and why?
Well, I didn't expect that curry was comprised of 3 different ingredients, so I feel I've learned a lot about curry today, and I'm going to have a new appreciation for Indian cooking. I've loved it all along. Now I'm going to love it even more. How about you?
I was surprised that corn, simple everyday corn, had such a long and interesting history. It goes back 9,000 years all the way to Mexico. But the thing that I really found amazing and stupefying, I was really surprised that the first corn that people ate was eaten in popcorn form, because you just wouldn't expect that. You would think that people would grab an ear of corn and start chowing down. They wouldn't start by putting that thing over an open fire and popping that corn, but they did. Okay, everyone. With that, today's article is now complete. But, as always, we sure hope that you guys have enjoyed reading along with us. Anyways, I'm Jeff.
I am Roger.
See you next time.